Hello, I'm Duncan Stewart. I'm going to explain to you how I discovered my spirituality, my personal spirituality. I've been searching for 50 years, I'm now 74 years old, for the meaning of life and spirituality, really. I didn't have that term initially. I started off as a robotic Anglican, following Mum's wishes at school, and I kept that going half-heartedly until I reached university. As a scientist, I could not believe in the Bible's teaching of creation in 7 days. That just didn't ring true, or in fact, the details in the Bible that struck me as being written way after the life of Jesus Christ. So I rejected that and I went in pursuit of the other options, particularly Eastern religions and philosophy. I was fortunate in my 30s to discover yoga and practical Vedanta, which is the philosophy behind Indian knowledge and teachings and yoga, and I think their whole approach to religion. I didn't subscribe to Hinduism or any of the religions, although I was attracted to Buddhism because of its fundamental emphasis on human behavior. So many trips to India, searching, looking, trying to find what it all meant, how to do it. But the breakthrough in my discovery of my spirituality occurred about 2 weeks ago, early in July, when I became ill and went to Royal Brisbane Hospital. I've got multiple myeloma, which is a terminal cancer of the bone marrow, given 2 to 5 years to survive when I was diagnosed in April Fool's Day, 2021. Anyway, in emergency, I was experiencing symptoms that I knew were caused by viral cold sore encephalitis. I'd had it before in September of 2024, and it turned into a 6-week marathon in hospital. 6 days intubated, intensive care, another week in intensive care, 2 weeks recovering, and then 4 weeks of rehabilitation. It was an absolute marathon caused by stress. And I know that's what brings on my outbreaks of cold sores. So managing stress has been a priority, but I haven't been able to do it successfully, totally. So I was in the emergency department of Royal Brisbane Hospital. And if you want to get an experience of what hell looks like, feels like, go and spend a day in the cubicle at Royal Brisbane. The noise, the chaos is just terrible. It's a terrible healing environment, but it's a wonderful diagnostic environment. And that's its purpose. So I decided then and there that I wasn't willing to go through another 6 weeks of hospitalisation, coupled to my 3 days lost every week with dialysis. And it reached a point that the burden of staying alive was exceeding the joy. And I decided that if ever that happened, I had the option of terminating my life by refusing dialysis and going into palliative care, where I would be medicated, morphine, and drifted into a blissful death. And that possibility of an escape was attractive to me, to know that I had an option. I wouldn't necessarily die on a slow, miserable death. I could control that. So that evening in emergency, I told the doctors, look, I want to end this. Please cease all treatment and get me in touch with palliative care, which they did without blinking, without any pushback. And that's the good thing about this, that there was no judgment. Within 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I rethought that if I was going to palliative care, I'd rather go from a more peaceful, organised position rather than from emergency, which was not a good place to transfer from there to palliative care. So I asked them to ignore that, put me back on full treatment, which they did. They put me in hospital for that night for observation, and I could feel that I was, well, for treatment really, that the encephalitis wasn't progressing for a number of reasons. But I put me into a beautiful, quiet, single room, which was heaven compared to the hell that I'd left in emergency. And I was compelled in that peace to once again try to meditate, which I often do, and usually thoughts take me away and I can't do it. On this occasion, I was incredibly successful. A comfortable chair, a quiet room, and my determination to meditate, which I did with incredible success, went into a deep, deep meditation, using methods that I'd known about for decades but hadn't been able to practice. And that went on for an hour, I noticed, and it was only stopped when a nurse came to the door, opened it, and said, "Hello, Duncan," and that brought me out of it reluctantly. But I knew then that for the first time in my life, I had managed to meditate successfully to a blissful space. And how I did that is covered, the methodology I've covered in another video on this channel that I would recommend you watch. I'm not here to tell you about that this time, it's already been covered. I went home on Friday and got progressively better. And on Saturday morning, I woke with amazing renewed vigor for life, health, and the possibility of life. I immediately called all of my treating people, including palliative care and dialysis, and said, "Put me back on the program, I want to go on." And from that moment on, my life has transformed. I look at that and think, why? Deep down, I think it was my positivity in making a decision to live, not to die, that somehow had a profound impact on my psyche and my determination to push on. I noticed from that day that my long-standing lower back pain, which I'd had for many decades, was gone. It was noticeably absent. I also noticed that my urine output, which is a measure of kidney function, dramatically improved. So those two things alone, plus my positive attitude, were miraculous. How could they go? I hadn't done anything to do that. But they had dramatically improved, and all other aspects of my life and health have been much better since that period of 3 days and that decision that I wanted to live, not to die. I have been, over recent times, talking to God, but nobody could tell me how to get a response from God. I've asked everybody I could think of, including people who are much more versed in religion than I am. Nobody could give me an answer. And it occurred to me that a deep meditation method enabled my mind to be aware of thoughts. Not the trivial thoughts about the sports or the movies or that sort of stuff, but after I've done a meditation, typically a thought would come to my mind out of nowhere. And I now know that's come from God. That's how God communicates with me, putting myself into a meditative state and then being receptive, and invariably a thought comes to my mind which I couldn't create, I couldn't imagine it, I couldn't dream it up, it just came. And that could only have come from a much higher power. To me, my spirituality is based on a belief on a much higher power, and that we are all connected to the universe from which we came and will return to. I call that God, but I also mean the universe, really this unimaginably huge environment we live in, where we've come from. So my communications are with God and the universe, and I believe my responses come from God and the universe. Since then, it's been the most blissful existence of low stress, because while I can meditate for an hour effortlessly, probably longer, but mostly an hour seems to work out at the period that's optimal for me. Once I've got that ability, I find that I can now snap into that very quickly and for a shorter period. So the teaching I got from Vedanta and from the School of Philosophy was to have meditative breaks all through the day to pause between activities into a brief meditation, which is something I'm indebted to the School of Philosophy, which I started in Sydney in 1986, at the same time that I took up yoga. They're both very, very aligned and I think have been helpful. But it's taken me from then to really make it part of my life, which I've now done. It's only been 2 weeks and you might think it'll be a passing fad, but I know it's not. I know that it's deep. I know that I've transformed fundamentally because of my ability to meditate at will throughout the day and for longer periods. And predominantly because that has enabled a deep stillness of mind, which enables ideas to come from God into my head. I don't dream up these ideas. They're more profound and more wise than I could personally dream up, but they end up being exactly what I need to do at that instant. And that ability has been transformational in how I live my life. My health has dramatically improved, as I mentioned earlier. Back pain gone, which was one of my major physical difficulties, and urine output. So my body seems to have also improved, not because I didn't ask for it. I was just blessed with these two things. And my vitality for life. And the sort of changes that have happened in my life is that from that period, I'm seeking wisdom and bliss and peace. And I've done that by stopping my addiction to the news. I used to watch that all through the day. I've now stopped that. And the only music I play is classical music. Encouraged by Mozart's thoughts and sharing that his music was channeled through him. He said he didn't sit there and create it, it came through him. And I think that must have been from the universe or from God. Where else would it come from? So I've discovered great support and peace from classical music that I play whenever I'm wanting some music, and from just this intention to keep doing what I'm doing. Now I'm calling this my spirituality. It's nothing like any of the other churches, religions, or preach. I don't follow any of that. I just follow this personal meditative existence, which enables me to get a message in my head that I totally believe has come from God. I don't know how other people could get that. I think the trigger was my decision to live and not to terminate my life. And something in those 2 or 3 days, the decision that I wanted to live seems to have been the trigger that has transformed my whole approach to life and living and to spirituality. I'm totally calm, blissful, and so grateful that I have discovered this. And I wanted to share it with other people, just in case you had an opportunity to try it. I'm not recommending that you have to go to palliative care and then change your mind, as I luckily did. But it was that decision that somehow set up my new way of thinking and my gratitude for life and my positivity. So that's how it happened for me. After 50 years, I've stumbled across my deep spirituality, which I'm entirely happy with. All of the other things I've looked at in some way have probably contributed to this, particularly Eastern philosophies, which I'm very much grateful for. The ideas from there have played a part in this, particularly the practice of classical meditation. And I mean classical, just focusing on a mantra or the breath and nothing else. I do not believe all the other options of guided meditation with music and a voice, that just causes thinking, causes ideas, and that's not helpful in my experience. So that's all I wanted to say, and share with the world, really, that it's a discovery I've made, and if it helps others, then I'd be very, very happy. As I say, please check out my How to Meditate, which I've also called in a separate video, How to Communicate with God, because I think that's the essence of my success in achieving total bliss, happiness. I wish you well, whatever you do, but if this causes you to re-examine your approach to spirituality, I'd be very happy. That's all I wanted to say. Sent with care and love in the hope that others might get a benefit. Bye for now.